Welcome to Storytime with Suge, presented by Suge Me the Mooney. What's up, y'all? It's your boy Suge. So, just came, I'm scrolling through Twitter today, and, you follow me on Twitter if you know me in my personal life, that, one of my biggest fascinations in like a bad way, matter of fact, like obsession in a bad way, is the third Godfather um film, Godfather Part 3, which came out the year of my birth, 1990, Christmas time. And the first two films, the first one came out in 1972, the second one came out in 1974. And if you watch both of those films, both in their own way told an appropriate uh story, and appropriate and concise story, both based off of the Godfather by Mario Puzo, and adapted to screen by Mario Puzo, and directed by Francis Ford Coppola. And the book The Godfather, like, it influenced me so much that during high school, after I finally watched The Godfather for the first time, I watched Godfather Part 2, and unfortunately for me, watched Godfather Part 3. I actually read the book, and the first Godfather is basically on the book. And the second movie, there's the second movie kind of follows two different, like, timelines. One tells the story of um Vito Corleone, when he was a young gangster, and how he got into the criminal business during the 1910s and the 1920s. And the main storyline continued on the first film, the events of the first film, where his son Michael, who really um didn't intend on being a gangster and being a mobster, let alone, like, you know, the Godfather, continues on where, something he didn't want to be. He just, you know, not only became really, like, immersed in it, and it cost him his family. Um oh, only thing I did not say before this video is spoiler alerts. If you've not seen The Godfather, not read The Godfather, not seen any of these three movies, um spoilers will be abound in this. But the first two films, really great films. Like, um they were so good. It's something that you don't see in today. Really, not even today, like, in really, like, movie history. Like, you'd see, like, the acting categories where these guys, their roles are written so well that you'd see, like, three of the guys being up for, like, supporting actor, and two of the guys being up for, like, best actor. Um, and then both won best picture at their respective Academy Awards. And Francis Ford Coppola basically felt, and Mario Puzo as well, felt that the story was told. Godfather 1, Godfather 2, that's it. End of story. Nothing else to be said. An interesting thing about the first two films, the first film was best adapted screenplay, and that was because, of course, it was adapted from the book, The Godfather by Mario Puzo. Then the second film, essentially outside of Vito Corleone's story, which was maybe a chapter or two in the book that they didn't get to put into the first Godfather film, they put into the second one. But other than that, the whole movie with Michael and Tom and Pentangeli, and him and Kay, who was played by Diane Keaton, and the crumble of his, you know, family as collateral damage from his criminal family. And that was all original. So they fought because they wanted best original screenplay, because everything in that movie outside of the video Corleone parts they created for that movie. But the Academy rule that once you have a story based on a book where characters from that book are being used, or any element from a book is used, it's not original anymore. So that's a little side tidbit. So fast forward now to the late 80s. Francis Coppola, he went through a lot of psychological things, from the shooting of Apocalypse Now, and then also in like the 80s he had like a lot of um basically flops. And kind of the same thing with Al Pacino. Like he kind of had like a down period in his career. I know a lot of people like Scarface came out in 1983, but and it's like a cultural, like culturally iconic movie today, but at the time it really was like a part of like a long line of flops that Al Pacino had. So his career was kind of on a downturn. So Francis Ford Coppola went to Universal and said to them like, "Hey, listen, what if I make this Godfather Part 3? Blah 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 blah. Like, we're gonna do this, we're gonna do that, whatever, whatever." And they agreed, and they felt that it would be beneficial to them to create this movie. He had like an idea of the type of film that he wanted to make. Of course, you would have all the principal characters, obviously, that were left alive from the end of the second Godfather. So you would have had Tom, you would have had Kay, you would have had Michael, you would have had Anthony, and you would have Mary Corleone, who were the children. I assume Tom's children would have been involved, like in a supporting thing, so in a supporting capacity. So you would add all these principal characters. One idea that was approached around, suggested, was that it would be set in the 70s. It would involve, because a lot of if you've seen American Gangster and you've read up on the big drug dealers in Harlem during the 70s, Nicky Barnes, Frank Lucas, a lot of them worked in tandem with the Italian mob. Um, they worked, hand in hand basically to run Harlem. So they wanted to have like a Nicky Barnes character, and the person that they wanted for that role was Eddie Murphy. So the thing about that was Eddie Murphy, early 80s, was going through, Eddie Murphy was like probably like the biggest star in the world. Beverly Hills Cop, Trading Places, blah blah blah. Mid to late 80s, Coming to America, Beverly Hills Cop 2. He kind of had like his downtime too. So I think that kind of like put a kibosh on bringing in Eddie Murphy. He had this grand idea that he would kind of I think what would have been a part of it too was they would have showed Sonny, Michael, Tom, Fredo during the late 20s, early 30s, Great Depression, and how like Tom, because that was one thing that they never really showed in the first two movies. Tom was like the adopted brother, but they never showed how this Irish guy became part of this Italian family. So that would have, he was kind of gonna do the same thing with Godfather 3 that he did with Godfather 2, kind of have like two different timelines. And at that point, Paramount and producers, it kind of got too expensive for their liking. And on top of that, they kind of put like a a rush on it because they wanted the movie out by Christmas time of 1990, and they cut his budget down. They made him rewrite the script, and what actually happened was they had gotten Robert Duvall, who played Tom Hagen, in, and basically the main conflict of the film, because the first two films were basically about family and doing and what you have to do for your family, what you think you have to do for your family, which are sometimes it costs you your family. You know, first movie, Michael loses his father, he loses his older brother, Sonny. Second movie, other older brother, his last remaining older brother, Fredo, killed, which is something that he ordered. And in the finished third film, you see him, he kind of dealt with it there, and it was kind of painful for him. And he even had periods in the film where like him and Tom kind of came into, like, actually in the first two movies there was like a lot of little, like, snappy stuff between him and Tom, you know and like the first movie he removes Tom from the consigliere position. Second movie, him and Tom kind of have, like, Tom kind of has like a difference in opinion about how they was, how they handled business and stuff like that. And the third movie would have kind of, if the original script or the original plot idea was used, the it would have came to like a climax. And what happened was Tom was cut from the movie because even though it was going to be Michael and Tom, Michael Corleone and Tom Hagen, these adoptive brothers basically combating each other. And the idea was like Tom was kind of going to turn, into, a state's witness, or kind of like, I guess, like the whole movie. That's the part I wasn't clear about. Maybe like the whole movie, he would have been kind of conflicted in himself on whether or not to flip on Michael, and it would have made for a really interesting film. And but then when he saw what Pacino was getting paid and what he was getting paid, and he's sitting there and he's like, well, when you look at the movie poster, it's gonna say Al Pacino and Robert Duvall. Why is Al Pacino getting paid so much more money than me? And he said it wasn't even like an issue with like Al Pacino. He was like, I'm not trying to take money from Al Pacino. I'm just saying what you're giving Al Pacino, you should be giving me. And that situation came to a head. And they decided, maybe Tom, all right, mind you, the movie's already being rushed. So Coppola and Puzo are trying to like bang out this strip, and it's not being now you kind of have to rewrite what your whole idea was because you're no longer using Tom. Um, and I think from that and the rush job is what you got. So that's where story time begins for me. And me and Mike, when we used to work together, I'm a big fan of films. I actually aspired to be a filmmaker and a director. And one of my influences was Francis Ford Coppola and, Godfather 2. Like, I love The Godfather. The first one is great, but Godfather 2 is hands down one of my favorite films because there's a lot of life lessons to be learned from that movie. Knowing who your friends are, oddly enough, like that work-life balance, because clearly that shit killed um Michael and Kay's marriage. So, but I always, every time since I've seen it the first time, like I keep looking at Godfather 3. Even my first time watching, I was like, this movie is so unnecessary. Like, the first two suffice enough. I'm like, you made like two of the greatest films of all time. Like on they both stand on their own feet. The first Godfather and Godfather Part Two. Like both of them, like honestly, like you could see Godfather Part Two without seeing Godfather Part One. You can see Part One without seeing Part Two. The fact that you can watch both is just an extreme luxury that we've been afforded. But to come along with this third film, and it's just like a travesty. Where do we begin? If you go back to the end of the second Godfather, like Michael and Kay's marriage basically ended. She couldn't take like his life anymore. She aborted their third child without his knowledge. Like it was basically done with them. Um he actually hit her, which I don't know what the feelings towards that was in like the 70s, but every time I watch it I'm like, whoa. So I'm thinking, I'm like, wow, like if a better film was to be made with Tom and like Kay, no offense, like why did you even like that money that you used to bring back Diane Keaton? You could have just brought back, take that with the money you was gonna use for Tom Hagen. I mean for Robert Duvall, make it make him and Pacino's salaries match, and it would have been a better film. Like I'm not trying to take money out of Diane Keaton's pockets, but I'm just saying if I was a producer, I'd say like, all right, you want to make a better movie, and the only principal character from like the movies other than Michael and Kay that was in the movie was Connie, and that's kind of like a layup because that's Talia Shire, who's Francis Ford Coppola's sister. Like, yeah, you're not gonna fight your sister, or if you Talia Shire, it's like, all right, like my brother needs me, so I'm gonna be in this movie regardless. So she was in there, and like she kind of like had a hands-on role in the family, and it was kind of like it was not really present in the first film, but in the second film, like towards the end, it kind of seemed like she was gonna get involved a little bit. So that was the principal character. So you got Connie, you got Kay, you got Michael, and then they killed off Tom, in the interim between Godfather 2. Because mind you, this is 16 years between the two movies. So in the interim, he's being killed, and this movie I think it was set in like 1977 or so, like mid to late 70s, and they changed the script to kind of focus on um Sonny Sonny's illegitimate son, Vincent, who was the daughter of the girl that Sonny was having sex with during the wedding in the first movie in the opening. And that was played by Andy Garcia, and he was great. And then it also figured in like Mary Corleone, who was the daughter of Michael, and she was originally supposed to be played by Winona Ryder, but some came up. I think it was like a scheduling conflict, and Winona Ryder had to back out. And of course, as I was mentioned, movie on a very tight timeline or a very tight schedule. He brought in his daughter Sofia Coppola to play Mary, and she wasn't great in that film. I mean, shout out to her. She went on to become a great movie director in her own right, but acting wasn't her thing as far as that movie was concerned. And basically, they added in a whole lot of stuff with like the Vatican Bank and the Pope, and try to like mix it in with like, I believe it was like a Pope that was only Pope for like 2 months, and like he died under like mysterious circumstances in real life. So they kind of tried to play on that, and like, oh, let's make it in a movie where it's like mob involved, and like to me, that's where it kind of got like complicated to me as a viewer. And Mary and Vincent, Michael's daughter, and Sonny's son. Now, I mean, I don't know. I'm not gonna say anything offensive about other people's cultures, but I don't know if it's maybe in like that culture that like the fact that Vincent was an illegitimate child. He was born out of an affair. He don't really count as like Michael's nephew, thus making him Mary's cousin. And in the movie, I don't know if it was just the fact, like I say, I don't know about other cultures, and I don't want to offend other cultures, but I'm trying. They never made it clear as to how that relationship happened, and it's not like weird because it's like, hey, your dad and my dad are like brothers. I mean, not like brothers. They literally are brothers. They have the same father, the same mother. Because technically, if like Sonny was married, Vincent Massey's mom, I forgot her name, um, he would be legitimate, but they just weren't married. That's the only difference. So they never, it was incest, basically first cousin incest. They ain't even like, oh, like, this is Mary getting involved with like Tom's son. And I mean, even that would be kind of weird because they would kind of like grow up as cousins. Um, but they wouldn't be blood related. But even then, like I said, it would be weird. So, but the thing is, in the movie, they never made it weird, and to me, it seemed like some like hillbilly like Alabama shit. And the only reason for them breaking up was because Vincent was about to be named as Michael's successor, and it would put her in harm's way. So that was my issue. The complicated um papal murder, Vatican bank shit, like that complicated it. I thought like the only kind of like decent plot line was Michael and Kay, even though Kay seemed like she was married to somebody else. I thought she had remarried at that point, was kind of like falling for Michael again. And then, they go to Sicily and they see she sees a picture of his wife that he had when he was in Sicily, when he was in hiding in the first movie. And she kind of like glosses over it, and like even though it's like, yo, she was like married to him and she was like waiting for him and used to go to the house looking for him and trying to get letters sent to him and blah 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 when he was in Sicily, and he was this whole time like he basically moved on with her and she didn't like feel any type of way. And like I said, like the third movie it just seemed very like hammy. It just like, to me, like in high school I kind of started writing plays, and basically I plays movies, and like my movies was kind of like rip-offs of like movies I liked, like Reservoir Dogs, um Godfather, Goodfellas, and like that third movie was definitely like some shit I would have made. And I think it actually made my writing better because I was like, even I couldn't write something this bad. But Andy Garcia was great in that film. He was great. Al Pacino, great. Talia Shire, great. Even though I think they kind of like juiced up her part a little bit more than it needed to be. Diane Keaton was great with what she worked with, but with a lot of like these bad movies or like bad sequels, it's just like you when you find out like they were originally much better, it makes you hate them even more. And that's how I feel about Godfather 3. The reason I brought it up in this is because I was watching when I was going through Twitter, like people were talking about like a potential fourth or fifth, a potential fourth, maybe even a fifth Godfather now, um, because they're actually making a movie about the making of the original Godfather. I think Oscar Isaac is playing Francis Coppola. It'll be interesting to see who plays like Brando and Pacino and Duvall and James Caan, and that'll just be an interesting movie. So that's why it was brought up. And I think Francis Ford Coppola said, like, I made the movies, but I don't really like own them. So if you Paramount wanted to make like another Godfather, like they still have the license to. And then Diane Keaton actually like admitted it came across too, like she admitted like this third movie was not good. And it's interesting because a lot of people, they make like bad movies and then they kind of like wait and just be like, no, I can't leave it like that, and then they come back and make it like a good movie. Like Steven Spielberg, he felt like Temple of Doom wasn't great, so he was like, I have to make like Last Crusade, and it's got to be really good. And to me, Last Crusade is like the best Indiana Jones movie. And I've said that because it's always, especially the way Hollywood is designed today, or how things go in Hollywood today, nothing's original no more. Everybody wants to make like Godfather 3s, which stinks because that means a potential Godfather 1 is just out there, and they're not making that because they want to work on known commodities. And I thought about it, and I was like, this is probably the first Desperation sequel. And to me, what a Desperation sequel is, it's like, they basically make a sequel just to make money because they know it's a known property and you're gonna get people in. So sometimes they sacrifice the quality of the film just to turn a profit, which I think, and I used the idea of these Star Wars sequels that just came out, Force Awakens, Last Jedi, Rise of Skywalker. Like those were like desperation sequels because there was no plan for like a trilogy. There was no like outline as to like, okay, this is the beginning, this is the end. We're gonna use these three films to get there. I think they kind of like went with the flow of it. I mean, they kind of like went with the flow, and then whatever came out. And to me, the first two were great, and then the third one wasn't great, but that's neither here nor there. And you could say like, oh, like what about the prequels? And to me, I think the prequels, when they came out, they were actually planned. Like, and if you watch those films, they actually, went through a certain story. And unfortunately, what happened was, due to the immense following that the original trilogy had, they tried to shoehorn a lot of fan service into it, and it kind of saturated the quality, as well as a lot of extra CGI just to say we had CGI. And that's why the prequels quality was bad. But the story overall, if you watch Phantom Menace, Attack of the Clones, Revenge of the Sith, A New Hope, Empire Strikes Back, Return of the Jedi, like they all really like follow a linear structure. Is when you get to those prequels, you just like, eh. And that's why I feel like Godfather 3, it kind of set up the line for that, because Paramount just wanted to put out a movie on Christmas of 1990. They basically rushed it out, and they kind of like tarnished it. I said when I was reading something on online, shout out to Bro Bible, but the guy that wrote the article, he was like, I've actually never seen the third film. When I read that shit, I was like, I wish I was so lucky. Cause man, if like the only two Godfather films you watch are the first two, man, lucky you. Cause that third one, man, ugh. What this has been Storytime with Suge.
Let me speak. Suge is fucking awesome. We need you. Let me speak. Suge is fucking